Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, reporting from just outside the Palace of Westminster in the heart of London, where politics, policy and markets collide. Coming up on today's show, all of the fallout from Rachel Reeves' budget as questions over tax, growth and credibility dominate Westminster. And I'll be speaking to the Royal African Society's new CEO, Stella Okuzu, about soft power, investment and the next chapter in UK-Africa relations. Then later, we round up this week's biggest business and market stories, from bank lending to global growth risks. But first, Tulip Siddique, the Labour MP and former Treasury Minister, has described a 2-year prison sentence handed down in Bangladesh as deeply unfair after a court in Dhaka convicted her in absentia on corruption charges she strongly denies. Prosecutors allege she used her influence with her aunt, the ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, to secure a plot of land for family members on the outskirts of the capital. Siddique, who is based here in London, says she has never been formally notified of the charges, has received no summons and only learned of the verdict through media reports. Her lawyers dispute that she is a Bangladeshi citizen and say she has not held a Bangladeshi passport since childhood. Senior UK legal figures, including former ministers and human rights lawyers, have raised concerns about due process, calling the case contrived and questioning the fairness of the proceedings. Labour says it does not recognise the judgment, arguing that Siddique has not been given a fair opportunity to respond. She remains an MP, retains the party whip and insists she has done nothing wrong. There is no extradition treaty between the UK and Bangladesh, and she is not currently under investigation in Britain. Here in Westminster, the political and economic stakes around last week's budget are rising. The Chancellor is under intense pressure over a £26 billion package of tax rises and spending restraints, which the OECD now warns will act as a headwind to growth, even as it upgrades the UK's near-term outlook and predicts inflation will fall back towards target over the next 2 years. At the same time, the budget watchdog has publicly challenged Treasury briefings about the state of the public finances ahead of the statement, prompting a highly unusual clarification and the resignation of OBR Chair Richard Hughes, a move some economists say is negative for the UK's fiscal credibility. So, what does all of this mean for Britain's economy, markets, and the government's claim that growth is a #1 priority? To unpack the politics, policy and market reaction, I was earlier joined by our Downing Street correspondent, Simon Pusey. Simon, so we've seen this extraordinary clash between the Treasury and the OBR, which led to the resignation of Richard Hughes. Also this week, the OECD have almost criticised Rachel Reeves' budget, saying that it's a headwind to growth. Just talk to me about how what's supposed to be a pretty straightforward fiscal event has turned into a scandalous statement.
Well, I think in terms of Rachel Reeves, it's probably quite lucky that the OBR had that massive issue in terms of releasing their report on the budget 45 minutes before to a website they thought that no one would ever check, and therefore everyone had the information beforehand, because it kind of takes the scandal away from Rachel Reeves a little bit. It sort of diverts attention a little bit, and it gives top Labour brass an opportunity to go and hammer someone else, even though Rachel Reeves has a big scandal herself, by people saying she misled and the Prime Minister misled people beforehand, saying there's this huge hole in the public finances, which there was, but then they didn't also talk about this other pocket of money, tax reserves that had been higher than they'd predicted, so that actually that big hole wasn't as big as that they were making out. So that was a scandal in itself. And then so for the Office for Budget Responsibility to then have their big clangor, and then sack their chairman or their chairman to resign. I think that was quite good and lucky for the Chancellor and for the Prime Minister, but it hasn't been plain sailing at all, far from it.
Kevin Badenoch says the Chancellor should resign.
Yes, she's been saying that for a while. I think she's saying that before the budget as well. This budget, there was always going to be tough, wasn't it, because of the first budget and how badly that went.
Yes.
And
nobody wants tax rises.
And everyone thought it was going to be an income tax rise, right? And that was going to be the unprecedented in 55 years or whatever. So I think if you're a Labour politician, I think the budget was pretty much what you'd have wanted. I think you would have then been angry to find out that the Chancellor and the Prime Minister have been misleading people. You'd been going out to your constituents, and you'd been going out on camera exactly saying, look, we've got this big, several £billion hole that we need to fill, so of course we need to raise taxes, and then to be told, well, actually that wasn't quite the case, and no one had been. So it's another few weeks in politics, isn't it? It's another few weeks in this current climate. I think Labour will be fairly happy at the moment, mainly because the attention has so much been on reform for the last few months. And in the polls, they are slowing. Their growth is slowing, and I think partly because of the Labour position now on migration, and following the Danish model, which has got so much attention and has gone and is so radical compared to what you'd expect a normal Labour government to be, that it's kind of taken the wind out of Reform sails. That is Reform's signature policy. That's what they bang on about. And so for Labour to almost be moving into their territory, I think might also be, there's also a lot of controversy around Nigel Farage, as there so often is. So, I think it's not been an easy few weeks for Labour, but I think also you might say they might have taken it a couple of weeks ago.
Just final words on the Prime Minister, who hasn't been faring well. I think, is he not the most unpopular British Prime Minister in history?
Yeah, I mean, it's
shocking.
If you think about the landslide election victory and how recent that was, and
just
the opportunity they had then to do stuff, they to be an athlete, to be a Bevan, to come in and reform. They had numbers, they had serious numbers, and they had a bit of good political goodwill. And how
now
quickly,
they've got infighting and distaste.
Well, that is the Labour way, isn't it? How quickly that has dissipated. I think a lot of Labour supporters and people who wished the government well after many years of obviously Tory infighting. I think it's pretty disappointing. And
is he going to last?
I imagine he'd last. I mean, obviously, we're only a couple of weeks since Wes Streeting apparently was on manoeuvres, and then came out and said, I'm
the Health Secretary.
The faithful since Joe Marler, and was playing all that. He played that very well.
Yeah.
I think probably people, are running out of patience with Keir Starmer, and we've seen that already. Given you win an extraordinary majority, and then a couple of months, just over a year later, your own ministers are manoeuvring against you supposedly, and you have to go out and so I think
talk less of the public.
It's a bit of a mess, isn't it?
It is.
It's sort of clinging on and seems to be clinging on, and I think even top Labour ministers are saying, look, by the next election we're going to be out of here.
Wow.
So and meanwhile you've got people defecting from the Conservatives to Reform. So there's all sorts of things going on.
Yes.
But it's just another day in politics at Westminster, isn't it?
It is, although the Christmas tree's up. You managed to light the tree successfully.
That's true.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you.
From Westminster's battle over budgets to the bigger question of how Africa is positioned on the global stage. Our next conversation looks at power, perception and policy from a different angle. One of the institutions at the heart of that work is the Royal African Society, which for more than a century has helped shape dialogue between Africa and the UK across business, arts, academia and politics. Leading its next chapter is the organisation's new director and CEO, Stella Okuzu, who I recently caught up with. Stella Okuzu, thank you so much for joining me on Channel's Business Global today, and thank you so much for allowing the viewers to come into your office, which is snug and intimate.
Thank you.
I've got to say, it's quite intimidating,
Really?
bustling through all of the students at the School of Oriental and Africa Studies, SOAS, which is a huge historic institution known globally. Before we get into the meat of the discussion, talk to me about what it's like being surrounded by so many students. It's not just SOAS that's based where we are.
Yes.
There's also UCL and Birkbeck.
Yes. To be honest, I love the energy they gave me. So when I come in, I feel younger. So I tap into that energy, and quite frankly, I do need the energy for the work we're doing here in Royal African Society, because there's a lot to do. It's a very exciting moment to me.
Yeah.
So simply put, it's lovely having young blood around me.
Yeah, it's really great. You do feast upon them. Let's talk about this role. You've stepped in as interim director and CEO of the Royal Africa Society. What mandate were you given, and what does success in this role look like to you?
The mandate of the society is simple. It's simply to amplify the voice of Africa in the United Kingdom and globally. Yeah. So that's my mandate, because that's the mandate of the organization. We have a we have a long history. We'll be celebrating 125 years. I know, massive moment, 125 years next year. We are very privileged, so we are the only royal charter that is focused on Africa. And so that's why we have Prince William as our patron. And so coming back to what I need to do is to amplify the voice of Africa in a way that the relationship between Africa and the United Kingdom remains in the fore, but increasingly as equal strategic partners.
That's right.
Because Africa has come a long way. The United Kingdom has come a long way also.
As the relationship.
Indeed. So getting what has worked, what hasn't worked, how can we foster this relationship better for the common good, especially as regards the African continent? And obviously we're both African. Africa is 54 countries, but we're looking at the Pan-African approach. So for me, in things that we're doing, events, what are those specific events as triggers for interventions where we are enhancing the overall good across Africa, different segments? I mean, I can tell you a bit more because we are a peculiar organization in the sense that we have 4 different pillars, if you will. We serve as a secretary to the All Political Parties Group on Africa. So that is co-chaired by a member of Parliament, Chi Omora MP, and Lord Johnny Oates, who's a member of Lords. So that gives us a privileged position to facilitate and organize meetings that influence on Africa, so on the UK's Parliament decisions or policies as affect Africa.
Is it just influence, or is action also and execution vital?
To be honest, it's more influence because if, for instance, there is an issue in, I'll say, DRC, and we have people from the DRC who mention, then we can organize meetings, and so the people in Parliament are better aware of the situation, and then those issues could be tabled, at Parliament for conversation. So they do their thing, but what we essentially are, we are the connector between Africans and the UK Parliament, which is a very huge responsibility. We also have interventions in the business space. So we are a membership-driven organization. Yes. We have individual members and corporate members. And so with corporate members, we give them the opportunity to use our platform to speak about the brilliant things they're doing, whether it's in the UK or across Africa. And we will be having our annual business lecture next year, part of the 125 years intervention. So that's celebration. So that's on the business side. Yeah. And then we are based in a university, and so academics promoting book launch. So there's actually a book launch we're doing in conjunction with SOAS today. We have a platform, African Arguments, where African academics and journalists can write their articles, and is available for everyone to see. Yeah. And then we are also custodians of a management journal, which is published by the Oxford University Press. Yes. So the #1 African journal for African academics. So it's quite a bit.
Yes, very rich in history and depth.
Indeed. So never a dull moment with us. But so we also need to be strategic at what are the things we're doing and why. And of course, how could I forget? There's the arts and culture piece.
That's right.
The arts and culture piece, our flagship event just ended on Sunday.
Film Africa.
Yes. It was amazing. 10 days of films across different locations in London, including the British Film Institute, where we had our opening and closing. We had a masterclass with Kunle Afolayan, who's,
goodness me,
I know, well acclaimed.
An icon.
I know in the film industry. And we had a masterclass at BAFTA. And we had lots of young people, like it was just sitting in the room. And so he was simply sharing his experience, how he comes up with his themes, how he got the Netflix deal, what worked, when to say yes, when to say no. So all enriching opportunity for everybody, really.
Coming up after the break, we look back at some of the biggest business news stories of the week, and we'll bring you more from my conversation with Stella Okuzu. This is Channel's Business Global. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, reporting from just outside the Palace of Westminster in central London. Let's now take a look at the business stories making headlines this week. One of the largest direct-to-citizen donations in US history is underway as tech billionaire Michael Dell and his wife Susan announced a $6.2 billion gift to help seed newly created Trump-branded investment accounts for children. The program will see 25 million children receive $250 on top of the US government's existing $1,000 allocation for babies born between 2025 and 2028. The Dells say their aim is to give young Americans a small financial head start that could compound over time, with the accounts invested in low stock cost market index funds. Critics, however, warn the scheme risks benefiting wealthier families more and adds new complexity to the US savings system. Still, with major employers also pledging contributions, analysts say the policy could reshape long-term household investment trends across the country. Samsung is pushing ahead in the global tech race with the launch of its first multi-folding smartphone, the Galaxy Z Trifold. The device features 3 panels opening into a 10-inch display and will debut in South Korea on the 12th of December before rolling out across Asia and the Middle East. A US release date is planned for early next year. Samsung says the Trifold is designed to test durability, hinge performance and software ahead of expected competition, including Apple's entry into the foldable market in 2026. Priced at roughly $2,500, the phone supports 3 apps running side by side, a desktop-like mode and super fast charging. Luxury fashion house Valentino is facing backlash after unveiling an AI-generated campaign for its new Divine handbag. The visuals, which show surreal collages of models emerging from gold handbag structures and morphing into swirling body forms, sparked intense criticism online, with comments describing the content as lazy, cheap and embarrassing. Critives argue the campaign highlights deeper concerns about AI replacing human artistry, especially within high-value brands where craftsmanship and storytelling matter. Valentino has not commented publicly yet, but analysts say this controversy reflects a broader tension in the fashion industry, the push for innovation versus the fear that technology could dilute luxury's emotional appeal. Now, before we go, we return to our conversation with Stella Okuzu, the new interim director and CEO of the Royal African Society. Earlier in the programme, we explored RAS's evolving role in policy, investment and cultural diplomacy. In this next part, we discuss the organisation's vision for African influence globally and how it plans to empower the next generation through education, partnership and storytelling. Here's more from the interview.
I want to ask about the membership. I know you just started your own September, although you're incredibly busy. I've seen you out and about, really making sure that the RAS flag is being waved. But some would say perhaps that you're not as inclusive as you should be. So some of the festival, for example, Africa Right, not everybody would know about it. I'm sure some people would want to be a part of it. Mm-hmm. Is that deliberate?
Our intention is for more people to know about what we do.
Yeah.
And so that really has affected the kinds of programs we have had in the last couple of months and going forward.
Yes.
Specifically, I'll talk about Film Africa. So for Film Africa, we had 50 films from 20 different African countries.
Wow.
Yes, which was powerful. From DRC,
very diverse.
Yes, Ghana. We had some films in French, in Arabic, in English. So that diversity was there. We could do a lot more in terms of publicity, which we're working on. We have 2 categories, as corporate and individual members. And each time we have an event, so I can speak specifically for the Film Africa, just hosting that and having people watch movies, talk about soft power. You're watching a cinema. So there's a film, say Nawi, about a child bride and how she gets married at age 13. People find a way to connect because they say, oh my God, we don't get to choose the circumstance of our birth. This could easily have been me. So the more we have those interventions, the more people get to know about us and want to be part of it. Absolutely. So for every event we have had, we have more and more people wanting to join us, and that is especially what we want.
What is the makeup, Stella, of the people that are getting involved? Of course, we are in Britain. I was speaking to you off air last week. Channel's Business Global viewers will know that Duke of Edinburgh was in Lagos, which was absolutely great. We know that relationship between Britain and Nigeria and Africa is strong. But I suppose there are some people that would want to see more black participation, shall we say, in the Royal African Society. I don't think that's, a negative viewpoint. I think that helps shape perhaps some of the programs, which is why I want to hear more about the membership.
Yeah, so you are right. For an organization that is 125 years, the membership historically would have been skewed more towards the British part of our heritage. That is changing. And so even in our membership drive, we're trying to achieve balance. And I like to say that in the Royal African Society, we have a mix. We have members who've been here for years, and when they speak to me, oh, Stella, in the good old days, this is what we used to do, which is nice, but then we're in 2025, and so we're actually looking at a situation where we can have people share what it used to be in the past with the younger people.
That's right.
Africa is a young continent.
I want to go back to Africa Rights and Film Africa. It's two really important cultural platforms because they help so much in the storytelling of Africa. Do you think that global perceptions of Africa are changing? Do you think they're stagnating? How do you think they are shifting? It's great being celebrated, isn't it? But we want more depth. We don't just want bells and whistles. We want people to really respect us.
So there are two things. I find a lot of the visibility we get about the continent is more skewed to the arts and culture side, which is a good thing. But there is so
we're more
much
than entertainment, aren't we?
I know, yeah. We're more than entertainment. We're more than, Nollywood.
Yeah.
There's also huge businesses.
Yeah.
And even increasingly, I'm coming across Africans whose parents set up thriving businesses, second generation, in the 50s and the 60s. They have the evidences, the invoices. So there's a story that is yet untold. So we want to use this platform to tell those stories. So we get respect not just for our arts and culture, but also for the business that Africans do across the world. But even within the arts and culture space, there is a shift, okay? Because like I was saying to somebody, that if you watch a good movie, you would say to someone, oh, I watched a brilliant movie on Friday. The next question the person would probably ask was, okay, who was in it? Or who was the producer?
Yes.
But not, what's the country of origin? Where was it produced? Is it an African? So for us, we want to use Film Africa as a channel to bring African cinema right in the center of global cinema.
Yes.
And that is already happening. So our opening movie for the film festival was My Father's Shadow. And we had chosen that, so it was a very long process of selecting the movies, 387 movies viewed from January to when we had the festival. But we chose My Father's Shadow as the opening film for the film festival. And it turns out that that particular movie is the movie that was chosen by United Kingdom as its nominee film for the Oscar Awards in 2026. And it's being presented as Britain's international film for the Oscar. So already the lines are blurring.
Synergy.
Indeed. So it's more about quality of, as opposed to, is it an African movie or is it so quality speaks. And we want to provide a platform for the best of African productions, films, books, businesses to be showcased.
Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today. But as always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channel's Business Global. Goodbye.